Hello everyone, how are you doing? My name is Ryan Kelly and I'm going to be hosting another episode of Know Your Bosses. Know Your Bosses, if you're not aware, is a show where I'll review some of the most classic bosses to the lesser known ones. I'll rank them based on their difficulty, creativity, appearance, and fighting style. In the end, the boss will get a ranking from 1, avoid the fight, to 10, pursue the fight. So now that I've quickly gone over the rules, we can talk about the boss we'll be fighting today. Today I'm going to be discussing location. This location section in particular is going to be a lot longer than most of my other location sections because there are several different ways to get to the Abyss Watchers and several different ways to approach each path. And plus, this is a Dark Souls game that we're talking about. It's not going to be easy to get to one of the most important bosses in the game. Anyway, the Abyss Watchers are located in the Farron Keep and actually can be pretty tricky to get to, especially if it's your first time to play a Dark Souls game. In order to be able to beat the Abyss Watchers, you need to have beaten Vort of the Boreal Valley and have access to the Road of Sacrifices bonfire. Once you get to the Road of Sacrifices, you're going to have access to the Crucifixion Woods, which will give you access to two different paths, being the path towards the Crystal Mage and the path to the Keep Ruins. You're going to want to go on the path to the Keep Ruins in order to get to the Abyss Watchers. The footage that I'm showing on the screen is the best way to get to the Keep Ruins from the Road of Sacrifices. Once you get to the Keep Ruins, you're going to need to extinguish 3 of the burning flames within in order to be able to open a huge stone door where the Abyss Watchers are located. The flames are not hard to find, but if you're having trouble finding the flames, then go to the Old Wolf Farron bonfire, which is located in the huge tower to the right of the Keep Ruins bonfire. Another way to find the flame is to look up at the sky and follow the trail of smoke in the air. The easiest way to find all the flames is to follow the fire that is scattered throughout the area. They actually make a pathway to each one of the flames if you follow it from start to finish, which is something that I didn't know until my 3rd playthrough of the game. If this sounds too confusing, then here's a map where everything is within the Farron Keep. I would recommend to extinguish the flame with the Farron Keep bonfire last because that flame is the closest one to the stone door where the Abyss Watchers are. Also, keep in mind the Keep Ruin is covered in poisonous sludge, so make sure to have a lot of purple moss clumps to get rid of that poison. Once you've extinguished all 3 of the flames, then all the torches around the door will light up and the door will open. Now, from the Farron Keep bonfire, you'll go through the door, run past the Dark Wraiths by the entrance, and then go to the right to find the Farron Keep perimeter bonfire. This is the best bonfire to rest at in order to get to the Abyss Watchers because you'll completely avoid the Dark Wraiths and you can avoid most of the other enemies in the area before the Abyss Watchers. The best way to get to the Abyss Watchers without getting hurt by other enemies is to either wait for the Dark Wraiths to kill all of them and then run past the Dark Wraiths, or to run to the right of the Dark Wraiths and loop around the area with the Abyss Watchers. I personally prefer to use this pathway because I find it to be the quickest way there, and it's pretty easy to avoid the enemies once you get the movements down. Once you get there, then there's only one thing that you have to do, and that is to walk towards the center of the room for the cutscene to play and for the fight to begin. Lore. The Dark Souls series is known for its deep lore, so it only makes sense to make a section about the lore for the Abyss Watchers. Plus, I don't think that I could have fit the lore into the boss information section, because there's actually quite a bit of interesting facts about the Abyss Watchers that doesn't involve the lore. So with that out of the way, let's dive straight into the Abyss Watchers lore. The Abyss Watchers are members of the Undead Legion, which was tasked with doing whatever it took to destroy the Abyss. In fact, they were actually the leaders of the Undead Legion. If they see any signs of the Abyss, they'll do whatever it takes to destroy it, even if it means that they have to destroy an entire country. The Abyss Watchers were known for the armor that they wore. The most notable feature about the Abyss Watchers' armor was a pointed helmet that they would wear. These helmets became an ill omen throughout Lothric. What made the Abyss Watchers so powerful is the fact that they based themselves off the legend of Sir Antorius, the Abyss Walker, the man who sacrificed himself to the Abyss in order to save his friend Sif. The Abyss Watchers wanted to be more like Sir Antorius, so they partook of the wolf's blood, which is said to enhance your body as well as your very essence. Anyone who partook in the wolf's blood was linked to the soul of Artorius himself. As such, instead of each body hosting its own distinct soul, all that partook of the wolf's blood share one soul distributed between them. They also wield great powerful swords that were very similar to Sir Artorius, but they also used crooked daggers, which made them stand out from Sir Artorius. In addition, they were strongly against using a shield and would rather always be offensive. As I mentioned earlier, the Abyss Watchers were just the leaders of the Undead Legion. There are still more ranks in the Undead Legion like the Acolytes and the Covert Foot Soldiers. The Undead Legion also befriended a crystal mage that would teach some of the Acolytes the arts of sorcery because of their lack of power. Everything was looking great for the Abyss Watchers at this point, until they left Keep to link with the fire. One of the most important things that had an effect on the downfall of the Abyss Watchers was what the Foot Soldiers were supposed to do to the corrupted members of the Undead Legion. They were to execute the corrupted members before they were transformed into creatures. Their primary technique in order to kill a corrupted member was to surround the target, burning and stabbing them and finishing them off with honor by throwing a spear to kill them. Wow, that is a really fucked up way to kill someone. Another very important factor in the Abyss Watchers' downfall is the fact that the Keep was right above the catacombs of Carthris, the home of Wolnir, the king consumed by the Abyss. When the Abyss Watchers left Keep in order to link the fire, the soldiers saw that they had nothing to live for, so they went hollow and disappeared to the painted world of Ariandel. And since there was no one to execute the corrupted members, the Acolytes were consumed by the Abyss, and the Keep became consumed in a rotting bog. Once the Abyss Watchers woke up and were linked to the fire, they saw their home was corrupted and that they had failed their mission. This either caused them to become mad or to be corrupted by the Abyss, and no one was there to execute them, so their fate was sealed. So now the Abyss Watchers are caught in an endless battle with their most powerful foe, each other.
Boss information.
The Abyss Watchers are the first of the 4 Lords of Cinder that you can fight in the game, and is one of the only bosses in all of Dark Souls 3 where there are up to 3 different enemies that can attack you. They're pretty similar to the Shadows of Yharnam, which is a boss that comes from Bloodborne. The Shadows of Yharnam also use 3 enemies to attack you, and they use fire, just like the second phase of the Abyss Watchers do. And what's even more interesting about the similarities between the Shadows of Yharnam and the Abyss Watchers is that both of their fights take place in a swamp/forest-like area. Who knows, all this could just be a coincidence. Speaking of Bloodborne, the Abyss Watchers seem to have a heavy influence of Bloodborne bosses with the way that they fight and their appearance. They act similar to the way that a hunter fights in Bloodborne, especially since they don't use shields just like the hunters don't use shields. And interestingly enough, they also have a blood ritual that takes place right before the second phase of the fight begins, which is something that is common for a Bloodborne boss to do. Okay, I think that's enough about the Abyss Watchers' connections to Bloodborne. let's talk about the Abyss Watcher's connection to Hawkward the Deserter, an NPC that is found at the Firelink Shrine. Hawkward the Deserter was a former member of the Undead Legion, and was possibly a former Abyss Watcher. We know this because of his extensive knowledge of the Abyss Watchers, as well as him having the same armor as the Abyss Watchers. However, he doesn't have the helm that the Abyss Watchers are known for wearing. Now, people speculate that he took his helm off as a symbolic sign of him leaving the Undead Legion. He left them because the Abyss Watchers mocked him for using a shield in battle. And it seems like he left the Undead Legion before the Abyss Watchers partook of the Wolf's Blood, because he doesn't seem to have much or any knowledge of the Wolf's Blood soul, which is the soul of the Abyss Watchers. And finally, something that can easily be missed during your first playthrough of the game is an NPC that you can find in the Undead Settlement. His name is Yol of Londor. If you accept his merchant services, then you'll return to the Firelink Shrine and will give you 5 free level ups. Now you might be wondering, what connections does this have to the Abyss Watchers? Well, once you beat the Abyss Watchers, he'll die. It is unknown why he dies after the Abyss Watchers.
Strategy.
Since there is 10 different classes that you can play in Dark Souls 3, there are going to be many different types of strategies to take down the Abyss Watchers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the strategy that I use whenever I fight the Abyss Watchers. But before we get into this fight, I'm going to mention a few things that you should have in order to make the fight with the Abyss Watchers easier. First of all, it is highly recommended to use a shield during this fight, because the Abyss Watchers is one of the few bosses in Dark Souls 3 that can be parried. The best shield to have for this fight is the Grass Crescent Shield, which can be found by killing one of the 2 large crabs in the Crucifixion Woods. This shield raises your stamina recovery, which is something that will be helpful in this fight. Although a fire resistant shield like the Dragon Crescent Shield would also be very useful in this fight. Speaking of stamina boosting items, you can also find the Chlorothy Ring, which also raises your stamina recovery. This ring can be found by going into the hidden elevator by the Road of Sacrifices bonfire and jump off the elevator before reaching the top to find a hidden area that leads to the ring. Second, keep in mind that the Abyss Watchers are weak to thunder, so make sure to bring gold pine resin and or bundle to apply to your weapon, or just use a thunder weapon if you have one. And if you're making a faith build or have a high amount of levels in faith, then make sure that you bring a thunder spell with you, because it will really help you for a certain part of the fight. And finally, make sure that you know that the Abyss Watchers are resistant to dark and bleeding and are immune to poison and toxic. Alright, that is everything that I would recommend to bring for this fight. Now let's talk about the fight itself. The Abyss Watchers is a 2-phased boss. The first phase is the phase where there are multiple Abyss Watchers that can attack you, and the second phase is where there's only one Abyss Watcher, but its greatsword is on fire and it's a lot more aggressive than he was in the first phase. In the first phase of the fight, the Abyss Watchers will attack you with stabbing, dash slashes, uppercuts, and jump slams, and they'll use a bunch of different combinations of these attacks. Most of the time, they'll end their combos with either a slam or with an uppercut. It's actually pretty good when the Abyss Watchers end with a jump slam attack, because they'll be wide open for a backstab. Getting a backstab on the Abyss Watchers can be pretty easy to do once you learn where to hit the Abyss Watchers in order to get the backstab. It's right here, by the way. While we're on the topic of counters, let's think about the best way to parry the Abyss Watchers. Parries is one of the hardest things to get done in Dark Souls, so if you can't parry, then I would recommend looking up how to parry, or don't bother parrying and just stick to getting in backstabs. So for those who know how to parry, you're able to parry the Abyss Watcher's slashes and slams with his greatsword. Make sure whenever you're about to parry his greatsword to parry as he's charging his attack up, not in the middle of his swing. Now if you're not going to parry, then what I would do is to try to get 2 or 3 hits on him and then roll backwards. Now once a second Abyss Watcher spawns in, which happens about 30 seconds after the fight begins, then play defensive and wait until the 3rd Abyss Watcher comes in. Now if you're a sorcerer, pyromancer, cleric, or just have the ability to use spells, then I would recommend getting as much distance from you and the Abyss Watchers and try to hit them with long distance spells like this. Now once a 3rd Abyss Watcher spawns in, it will have red eyes and will typically go after the other Abyss Watchers unless you are the closest one to where he spawns. I typically let them fight it out once there's 3 of them, but if you have magic or fireballs, then you can hit them from afar. Now if the main Abyss Watcher starts to target you, then go back to the way that you were fighting him at the start of the fight. So that covers everything with the first phase of the fight. Let's talk about the second phase of the fight. In the second phase of the fight, the Abyss Watchers will have the same attacks as the first phase, but he'll now have some additional fire attacks like a dash burn and a quote-unquote fire sword attack. Now that's what the Dark Souls wiki called it, so that's what I'm going to be going with. Anyway, these two new attacks are very deadly because of how much range these two attacks have. Plus, now you'll have to deal with getting fire damage. So if you're not resistant to fire, then it is very possible to get one-shotted by its fire sword attack. This phase of the fight requires a lot of patience because if you rush in and try to get as many attacks in as you can, then you will die very quickly. The best time to attack him is after he does a jump slam or a fire dash because he'll be wide open for a backstab or just a regular attack. Just make sure that you only hit him once or twice because he won't stay stunned for as long as he would in the first phase. So just play it safe and strike when he finishes a combo and then you should beat him.
Rewards.
After defeating the Abyss Watchers, you will get the Soul of the Blood of the Wolf, the Cinder of a Lord, and 13,500 souls in New Game. The amount of souls that you get from beating the Abyss Watchers depends on what new game you're playing on. For example, you get 60,000 souls in New Game Plus, 80,000 souls in New Game Plus, and so on. Now, as for the Abyss Watchers items, with the Soul of the Blood of the Wolf, you'll be able to choose one of two different weapons, being the Wolf's Knight's Greatsword and one of my personal favorite weapons, the Farron Greatsword. If you decide on not making any of these two weapons, which I can't really see why you wouldn't want to make either one of them, then you're able to consume or sell the Soul of the Blood of the Wolf for 20,000 souls. And the most important item that you get from the Abyss Watchers is the Cinder of a Lord, which is used to help you get to the final boss of the game. You'll need to place the Cinders of a Lord on the Abyss Watcher's throne back at the Firelink Shrine. You'll also be able to buy all the Undead Legion's armor from the shrine handmade at the Firelink Shrine for a total of 31,000 souls.
Final thoughts.
In this section of the video, I'll be talking about how the gameplay, design, difficulty, fun factor, and creativity weigh in on my opinion on whether I think a boss is good or not. Anyway, now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's start this section. The fight with the Abyss Watchers is one of the most creative and intense fights that I've gotten the pleasure of being a part of. This is a fight that you will die to at least once, whether it's because you were blindsided with the fact that there were 2 or 3 Abyss Watchers after you, or just because you didn't know how to counter some of the Abyss Watchers' powerful combos. And the second phase was one of the greatest twists that I've had in a boss fight in quite a while. Whenever I saw the Abyss Watcher stand up after draining his health, I was shocked and died immediately. The entire fight to me actually felt like I was having an ongoing battle with the Abyss Watchers. I mean, I would die to the Abyss Watchers a bunch, but every time I died, I would learn something new about the way that they fought. I learned that I could backstab him more easily as you would do a jump slam, or that I could parry him whenever he swung his greatsword. This to me is how a boss fight should be done. There should be trial and error whenever it comes to facing a hard foe. Having a boss fight that takes time to learn their movement and the best way to beat them at their own game is one of the most satisfying things that can happen in a video game for me personally. I know that there are people who find the Abyss Watchers to be extremely easy, but I always find them to be challenging because the fight with them will never be the same because of the other Abyss Watchers that will show up throughout the fight. And one thing that I haven't mentioned in this video yet is the Abyss Watcher's appearance. Holy crap, is the Abyss Watcher's appearance great. You can tell that they are powerful and threatening just because of the way they move and just the way that they look at you in the first cutscene. And don't even get me started with how badass the Abyss Watchers look during the second phase. So yeah, I enjoy the Abyss Watchers a lot. I find everything about them to be great. I find the fight with them to always be challenging no matter how many times I beat them. I think their design is fitting for their lore, and I think that their fight is loaded with creativity. I mean, if the Abyss Watchers were only to have one phase, being the one with the multiple Abyss Watchers, then it still would have been a great fight. But the fact that they go the extra mile and add an additional phase to this fight that's even harder than the first one makes this a fight that will always be one of the most memorable fights that I'll ever have. So with that all in mind, my score for the Abyss Watchers is a 10 out of 10. Pursue the fight. So what do you think about this boss? Do you think this boss deserves a higher or lower ranking? Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this video or not. Also, make sure to click the like button if you liked the video and hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Ryan Kelly, and I will see you in the next episode of Know Your Bosses.